Some friendships feel weightless. They drift, effortless, unanswered, like leaves on a slow river. There is often one person in every circle who's the floater friend, present, adaptable, unobtrusive. They arrive easily, leave easily, and are rarely the center of attention. Being a floater friend is not about apathy. It is about survival, attunement, and a subtle negotiation with belonging. They sense the currents of social dynamics before anyone names them. They are loyal without being tied, attentive without claiming space. Yet this lightness carries its own cost. The floater friend learns to navigate invisibility, emotional containment, and self-effacement. They cultivate connection, but often at the expense of visibility. And long after the laughter fades, they are left measuring their place, not by love lost, but by the quiet space they occupy in others' lives. The floater friend often arrives softly, not as a disruption, not as a claim to attention, but as a subtle presence that adjusts to the room like water filling space. They notice the laughter that erupts, the conversations that swirl, the silences that linger, and they find their place somewhere in between. This ease of adaptation is not always conscious. It is learned in the small, early interactions where being noticed might feel risky or conditional. A child who senses tension may shrink to avoid conflict. A child who observes differences in attention learns to calibrate presence. In these formative moments, the skills of attunement are quietly practiced. The floater friend notices without comment. They remember names, moods, preferences, and invisible hierarchies. They can navigate the emotional currents of a group with almost instinctual precision. This makes them effortless company, the kind of person everyone enjoys having nearby, yet few truly center in their awareness. Being a floater is not a lack of desire for connection. It is an intricate negotiation. How can I belong without disruption? How can I be seen without attracting risk? The answers are learned early, often in family dynamics where harmony was prized and conflict felt unsafe. The floater's early environment teaches them the rhythm of careful presence, the power of observation, and the subtle art of influence without imposition. They are naturally empathetic, sensitive to cues others might miss. They sense moods, anticipate needs, and adjust without being asked. Yet, in this attentiveness lies quiet invisibility. The skills that make them excellent companions also allow them to blend into the background. Friendship becomes a dance of subtlety. They participate, contribute, and care deeply, yet rarely claim recognition. They learn to celebrate others without demanding spotlight, to support without expecting reciprocation. This pattern of quiet giving often begins in childhood, when noticing and adjusting became a survival strategy and continues naturally into social life. There is also a paradox embedded in their arrival. The floater can be everywhere, yet unnoticed. They can be essential to the harmony of a group, yet their own needs are often deferred. They derive satisfaction from connection, yet long for acknowledgement that may never come. This early adaptation is not innate passivity, it is nuanced intelligence. The floater friend understands relational dynamics deeply and intuitively. They read the room before speaking, modulate their presence, and anticipate shifts in energy. It is a social acumen born of observation and emotional calibration, not of dominance or assertion. In groups, they are often called easygoing, agreeable, or charmingly flexible. But beneath this ease lies a complex pattern of attention and restraint. They have learned to float between personalities, moods, and expectations, becoming the thread that connects without tying themselves down. Even as children, they understand the cost of insistence. To speak too loudly, to demand attention, to disrupt the flow is to risk exclusion, so they refine subtlety. They learn to listen first, adapt second, and step forward only when the moment feels safe. The floater friend's arrival is quiet, measured, and observant, but never accidental. It is a choreography shaped by early experience, emotional attunement, and an instinct for connection. They enter spaces lightly, yet leave an imprint that others often do not name. This subtlety is both gift and burden. It creates ease and harmony in the world around them, while leaving the floater friend to navigate their own quiet longing, the wish to belong fully, to be recognized as more than a supporting presence, and to inhabit life without always adjusting to others' currents. In this dance of visibility and invisibility, the floater learns the art of coexistence, an early mastery of empathy, subtlety, and social intelligence that will define their relationships for years to come. The tendency to float is rarely accidental. It emerges in childhood, shaped by environment, temperament, and circumstance. Some children are naturally attuned, sensitive to tone, expression, and unspoken rules. Others are gently nudged toward invisibility, learning early that presence must be negotiated carefully. Family is often the first arena of drift. In households where harmony is prized over conflict, children quickly learn who can speak freely and who must tread lightly. Where attention is uneven, they learn that asking for recognition can feel risky. A sibling with stronger needs, a parent with high expectations, or a family dynamic that favors extroversion may subtly shape the floater's adaptation. Temperament also matters. Quiet, observant, and sensitive children notice patterns others miss. They anticipate moods, navigate tension, and modulate their own behavior to maintain equilibrium. For them, floating is not passivity, it is strategy, a way to belong without inciting disruption. Early friendships reinforce these patterns. The child who drifts learns quickly that relationships thrive on compromise and awareness. They become skilled at reading social cues, adjusting tone and presence, and knowing when to step forward and when to recede. The reward is acceptance, albeit in a form that often minimizes their own needs. Cultural and social expectations also shape the drift. In some communities, quietness, compliance, and adaptability are praised. In others, assertiveness or visibility is rewarded. The floater's style often reflects these subtle societal values, a careful calibration of behavior that ensures belonging while minimizing risk. Unspoken lessons in family and society teach emotional economy. Attention is finite, praise is conditional, harmony is prized. The child internalizes that their own desires, when expressed too loudly, can disturb the balance. Even parental intentions, no matter how loving, can shape this path. A parent stressed by work, health, or personal history may unconsciously favor one child over another. The floater learns to compensate, to blend in, to observe more and ask less. Over time, this becomes a core part of identity. The result is a child who develops relational dexterity. They float not to avoid life, but to navigate it with minimal friction. They become socially intelligent, empathetic, and emotionally agile. Yet alongside these skills, subtle patterns of self-effacement and deferred desire take root. By adolescence, drifting becomes familiar. The floater friend knows how to enter spaces without demanding attention, to support without asserting, to listen without expecting reciprocity. They carry the paradox of presence deeply engaged, yet often unseen. The origins of this pattern are therefore layered, tempered by temperament, reinforced by family dynamics, and shaped by early social learning. It is a strategy born from necessity, refined over years, and later expressed naturally in friendships, workplaces, and intimate relationships. What begins as adaptation gradually crystallizes into identity. The floater friend floats not because they are invisible, but because they have learned the value of careful navigation. They understand the currents of social interaction and ride them with grace, subtlety, and attentiveness. Yet the drift carries echoes of longing. Beneath the ease, beneath the flexibility, lies the quiet desire to be seen fully, acknowledged, and understood, not merely as a supportive presence, but as an individual whose depth deserves recognition. And so the pattern continues quietly, gracefully, until some moment of self-awareness or relational shift invites reflection. Until the floater friend begins to notice not just the world, but their own place within it. The floater friend's mind is a finely tuned instrument. It records tones, pauses, expressions, and gestures with precision. Their nervous system becomes attuned to the rhythms of others before their own needs are fully articulated. Observation is survival, empathy is instinct, and subtle adaptation is a daily practice. Attachment theory offers insight into this architecture. Children who grow up with inconsistent or conditional attention often develop patterns of heightened sensitivity to social cues. They learn that emotional attunement is the currency of connection, that responsiveness requires anticipation, and that missteps may disrupt belonging. The floater internalizes these lessons early, shaping both behavior and expectation. Neurologically, the brain rewards harmonious interactions. Oxytocin responses are triggered by approval, calm engagement, and social synchronicity. Conversely, cortisol spikes accompany conflict, rejection, or being overlooked. The floater learns to navigate between these states, seeking connection while avoiding disruption. Emotional regulation becomes second nature. They learn to moderate expression, contain frustration, and suppress impulses that could disturb balance. The result is a profound ability to manage internal states and anticipate the emotional climate of a group. Their feelings remain rich and nuanced, but often contained, observed, and translated into strategy rather than spontaneous display. Social cognition develops in parallel. The floater friend becomes adept at reading unspoken hierarchies, noticing tension before it surfaces, and sensing relational dynamics that others miss. This skill fosters connection, influence, and subtle leadership without asserting overt dominance. They are, in many ways, social architects unseen, yet shaping the flow of interaction. The psychology of the floater also includes paradoxical self-perception. They may feel both highly connected and persistently unseen. Validation becomes intermittent, external acknowledgement rare, and self-worth often contingent on subtle relational feedback. Internal narratives may form. Quietly, I am valuable when I am useful. I am noticed only when I adapt. My needs are secondary to connection. Yet within this architecture lies deep resilience. The ability to float emerges not from weakness, but from emotional intelligence and acute sensitivity that allows navigation of complex social terrain. The floater learns to remain composed under social tension, to provide comfort without imposing, and to adjust their presence without compromising relational integrity. This emotional architecture is reinforced across life. In friendships, workplaces, and intimate relationships, the floater continues to modulate presence, negotiate recognition, and maintain harmony. Skills that were survival mechanisms in childhood now become tools of connection, empathy, and influence. But the cost remains subtle and often unrecognized. Suppressed desire, deferred needs, and the persistent question of self-visibility linger. The floater friend knows deeply how to belong, and simultaneously knows the ache of partial invisibility. Ultimately, their emotional architecture is both gift and restraint. It allows attunement, care, and subtle influence, while also shaping patterns of adaptation, self-effacement, and deferred desire. It is a living map of relational intelligence, survival, and the quiet negotiation between being and being seen. In understanding this structure, one begins to see that the floater friend is not aimless or superficial. They are deeply calibrated to the social world, navigating currents invisible to most, and carrying the delicate balance of self and others with care. This is the architecture of subtle presence, a pattern that supports connection, empathy, and relational insight, while also demanding self-awareness and occasional recalibration. The floater friend carries a quiet duality within. They are deeply present, attentive to the currents of connection, yet persistently at the margins. They belong to every circle, but never fully occupy it. Their presence is like soft light. It illuminates without casting shadows, always gentle, never demanding. This duality is not a choice but a pattern woven from experience. The early lessons of adaptation, sensitivity, and caution coalesce into a way of being attentive, generous, and careful. But alongside this grace lies longing, the desire to be acknowledged, to matter without negotiation, to be seen fully and without restraint. The paradox manifests in countless ways. They listen more than they speak. They support more than they assert. They navigate social tension with skill, often anticipating needs before they are voiced, yet their own emotional currents remain quietly contained. They become indispensable in function, yet invisible in recognition. This tension fosters internal conflict. They crave belonging yet fear disruption. They desire affirmation yet mistrust overt attention. They seek closeness but hesitate to impose presence. Every interaction becomes a negotiation between self-expression and preservation. The paradox also shapes identity. The floater friend often perceives themselves as adaptive, reliable, and easy to be around, but simultaneously undervalued, overlooked, or secondary. They may define worth by usefulness rather than intrinsic qualities. Their sense of self becomes intertwined with relational calibration. I am valuable when I help, when I adjust, when I fit seamlessly. Social dynamics reinforce the pattern. Others come to expect the floater's flexibility, their generosity, their silent support. Their invisibility becomes a comfort to those around them, a predictable and harmonious presence that rarely disrupts the group. And so, the cycle continues: presence without full acknowledgement, care without reciprocal attention. Yet the paradox is not wholly limiting. It cultivates extraordinary sensitivity, patience, and insight. The floater friend perceives emotions, motives, and dynamics that others overlook. They navigate conflict with grace and offer support without strings. Their quiet attunement becomes a gift, even if unrecognized. Still, beneath this attunement lies subtle ache. The cost of constant adaptation can be emotional fatigue, self-effacement, and longing for a recognition that often does not arrive. The paradox is a constant balancing act, giving without depleting, engaging without overwhelming, belonging without losing oneself. Some floater friends may feel a persistent question: if I am everywhere and adjust so easily, do I truly exist for others, or only in relation to them? This internal reflection underscores the delicate tension of presence and invisibility, of care given freely yet acknowledgement deferred. The paradox of presence is a defining feature of relational life. It shapes choices, boundaries, and internal narratives. It creates a life rich with empathy and insight, yet tinged with longing. It allows connection to flourish while silently demanding awareness of the self's unspoken needs. And yet, within this tension lies profound wisdom. The floater friend learns that true belonging is not only about recognition from others. It is also about cultivating a presence that is authentic, attentive, and compassionate, both to themselves and to the world they navigate. They are everywhere, yet they are learning, slowly, how to be seen by the one person who matters most: themselves. The moment of self-awareness is quiet, almost imperceptible. It arrives not as revelation, but as observation, a thought, a reflection, a pause that makes the invisible visible. The floater friend begins to see themselves not just in relation to others, but as an individual with desires, boundaries, and agency. They notice the rhythms of their presence, how they drift toward harmony, soften their voice, step aside for others. Patterns they once thought natural suddenly appear as learned strategies, subtle adaptations shaped by years of observation, caution, and care. And for the first time, they can name the paradox. Their empathy and insight are extraordinary, but their own visibility has been quietly deferred. Sometimes this awareness is triggered externally. A friend comments on their patience. A partner recognizes their attentiveness. A mentor notices how they adapt seamlessly. Other times, it is internal, a journal entry, a reflective moment, a pause in conversation that allows perspective to crystallize. The recognition is gentle, almost meditative, yet profoundly transformative. In this moment, the floater friend confronts truths long unexamined. They see how self-effacement, while adaptive, has limited their own experience. They understand how constant adjustment has been both gift and constraint. They notice the quiet fatigue that comes from giving without being fully acknowledged, from being seen as accommodating rather than whole. Awareness also brings gratitude. They recognize that their subtle skills, the attunement, patience, empathy, and emotional intelligence are rare and powerful. What once felt like mere survival is now reframed as wisdom. They can honor their abilities without feeling obliged to hide them. This clarity is liberating. The floater friend begins to see that their worth is not contingent upon the smoothness of social interaction, the harmony they maintain, or the approval they quietly earn. Value exists independently of visibility, and presence can be chosen, not coerced. Yet self-awareness does not erase discomfort. They may feel regret for moments when adaptation eclipsed self-expression, or sorrow for relationships navigated too cautiously. There may be longing for recognition never received, for presence fully acknowledged. But in naming these realities, they gain choice, the ability to engage with awareness rather than reflex, to inhabit relationships intentionally rather than automatically. This is the turning point. The floater friend begins to differentiate between adaptation as survival and adaptation as habit. They learn that presence and invisibility are not absolutes, but tools they can consciously navigate. The patterns that once unconsciously guided their life can now be observed, understood, and, if desired, recalibrated. The moment of self-awareness is not dramatic. It is not a declaration or an epiphany shouted aloud. It is a still, reflective recognition. I am more than the space I fill. I am more than the roles I play. I am here and I am seen, even if I have not always felt it. With this insight comes a subtle liberation. The floater friend begins to envision a life where connection does not demand invisibility, where attunement coexists with self-expression, where giving does not mean erasing. They begin to see their own contours, distinct, valuable, and worthy of presence. In this gentle awakening, the paradox softens. The floater friend realizes that floating need not mean disappearing. Harmony need not require self-effacement, and being everywhere does not preclude being fully seen. Owning space begins as a quiet experiment. The floater friend notices a subtle impulse. I can speak, I can stay, I can ask without fading. It feels strange at first, like stepping into a current that they have long navigated from the edge. But slowly, awareness opens the door to choice. They begin to test boundaries in small ways, raising a hand in conversation instead of deferring, expressing preference rather than adjusting silently, noticing fatigue and allowing rest without guilt. Each small act is a reclamation, a gentle negotiation with the habits that have defined them for so long. This is not rebellion. It is attunement turned inward, a recognition that their own presence matters as much as anyone else's. They learn that visibility is not selfish, it is authentic. They can float without disappearing, harmonize without erasing, engage without self-negation. Owning space also involves discernment. The floater friend learns to evaluate relationships and contexts. They recognize when adaptation is nourishing and when it is habitual at the cost of self. They choose where to invest energy and where to step back, balancing generosity with self-care. Gradually, the internal narrative shifts. I am seen not only for what I do, but for who I am. I belong not because I adjust, but because I exist. The skills honed for quiet survival are now tools for intentional engagement. Observation becomes wisdom, empathy becomes strength, and attentiveness becomes a choice rather than a compulsion. Integration of self also reshapes relationships. They are no longer merely the supportive presence. Their voice carries weight, their needs are voiced, and their limits are respected. Others may notice the shift, sometimes with surprise, but rarely with resistance. The floater's recalibrated presence is not intrusive, it is balanced, authentic, and grounded. This process is iterative. Ownership of space is not a single event, but a practice. It requires patience, self-reflection, and ongoing adjustment. Moments of slipping back into invisibility may occur, but they are met with gentle awareness rather than judgment. In reclaiming space, the floater friend discovers freedom. They can navigate the currents of connection while anchoring themselves in their own truth. Harmony is no longer a duty, it is a conscious choice. Flexibility becomes a strength, not a mask. Empathy becomes wisdom, not exhaustion. Owning space also nurtures confidence. They learn to value their perspective, their voice, their presence. No longer merely responding to the flow around them, they move through it with intentionality. Their presence is both light and grounded, visible without overwhelming, flexible without disappearing. Ultimately, owning space transforms the paradox of floating. the tension between presence and invisibility softens. The floater friend learns that they can belong fully, be attentive deeply, and still honor themselves. Connection and selfhood are no longer opposed, they coexist, balanced, graceful, and intentional. This chapter closes with the quiet truth: floating was never a deficit. It was a skill, a perspective, and a way of seeing others. Now, it is also a choice, a conscious, empowered way of being in the world. What remains after years of floating is not absence. It is quiet clarity, a deep, nuanced understanding of connection, presence, and the rhythm of human interaction. The floater friend carries memory, the patterns, the calibrations, the lessons learned, but also insight, compassion, and wisdom that others rarely recognize. They retain extraordinary sensitivity. The pause before words, the subtle gestures, the unspoken currents, these are all registered with acuity. They notice what others overlook: a flicker of emotion, a hesitant glance, the tension beneath calm words. Their perception is wide, their empathy deep, and their understanding of relational nuance profound. There is patience. The floater knows that attention is fleeting, that recognition may be intermittent, and that connection is a living, evolving force. They move gently through life, observing, adapting, and engaging with care. The nervous system, once finely tuned for survival, now supports insight rather than vigilance. They carry authenticity shaped by experience. They speak with intentionality, act with clarity, and inhabit space fully without fear of disruption. They have learned that floating does not require invisibility, that attunement is not self-erasure, and that connection does not demand compromise of the self. Gratitude coexists with reflection. The skills honed through years of quiet adaptation, listening, noticing, harmonizing, are recognized as gifts, not merely survival strategies. The floater friend appreciates the depth of perception they bring to relationships, the subtle influence they exert, and the care they can offer without diminishing themselves. The paradox softens. Floating is no longer a constraint, but a lens, a way to perceive and participate in the world with clarity and grace. They are everywhere, yet grounded, present, yet self-aware, attuned, yet autonomous. What remains is wisdom without weight, a consciousness of human dynamics, a capacity for empathy, and an ability to navigate connection with nuance. The floater friend understands impermanence, values subtlety, and carries a sense of belonging that does not depend on external validation. There is freedom in this understanding. They can drift, anchor, give, and receive without fear. They know that presence is not measured solely by attention, and that care can be expressed without losing self. They float lightly yet firmly in the currents of life. The weightless wisdom of the floater friend is a gift to themselves and to the world. It is quiet, enduring, and profoundly human. It reminds us that visibility is not the measure of worth, that subtlety is strength, and that being fully present does not always require taking the center. And in the end, they are both the observer and the participant, the quiet presence and the conscious self, the friend who drifts and the soul who anchors. Seen or unseen, they are whole, attentive, perceptive, and undeniably alive.